Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness. No matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming, we greet you today in love. Lighting our chalice this morning is Fran Britton. Fran?
We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heart of justice, and the flame of hope.
Thanks, Fran. On this Memorial Day Sunday, on this 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, on this day, like so many days, imbued with both unspeakable tragedy and amazing grace, overflowing with examples of human cruelty and of human courage, resonant with sounds of weeping and of singing, of gunshots and explosions, and of hammers and saws as homes are built and rebuilt. May we bring our whole selves into this time with anger, joy, and sorrow. On this day, may we bring a willingness to get uncomfortable, to be vulnerable in this sacred space as we work to create the beloved community that may be. Our opening hymn is a traditional spiritual, "Didn't My Lord Deliver Daniel?" or "Why Not Every Man?" It's arranged by Adam Pod and performed by the First Unitarian Church of Brooklyn.
Why not every man? Why not every man? Why not every man? Did my Lord deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel? Did my Lord deliver Daniel? So why not every man? Did my Lord deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel? Did my Lord deliver Daniel? So why not every man? He delivered Daniel from the lion's den, Jonah from the belly of the whale, and the Hebrew children from the fiery furnace. Then why not every man? Why not every man? Did my Lord deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel,
May 30th, 1871, the great abolitionist, statesman, and orator, Frederick Douglass, delivered a Decoration Day speech at Arlington National Cemetery. It was the first official commemoration of a new federal holiday. 6 years had passed since the end of the Civil War, and most who were present for the ceremony that day were ready to seek reconciliation between the North and the South. A crowd had gathered at Arlington Cemetery by a monument to the unknown dead of the Civil War. They stood by a mass grave containing the remains of 2,111 soldiers whose bodies had been scattered over battlefields. In that grave, there were those who had fought for the Union and for the Confederacy. For many in the holiday crowd, it was easy and comforting to think of all these dead as honorable soldiers. But as a man who had experienced life as a slave, Douglass wasn't so quick to forget. For him, it was important to remember why and for what these young men had fought and died. What follows is the speech Douglass delivered on that day, The Unknown Loyal Dead, as read by Larry Little, Loriana Lee Knapp, and Marshall Gimple. Larry.
Friends and fellow citizens, tarry here for a moment. My words shall be few and simple. The solemn rites of this hour and place call for no lengthened speech. There is, in the very air of this resting ground of the unknown dead, a silent, subtle, and all-pervading eloquence, far more touching, impressing, and thrilling than living lips have ever uttered. Into the measureless depths of every loyal soul, it is now whispering lessons of all that is precious, priceless, holiest, most enduring in human existence.
Those unknown heroes whose whitened bones have been piously gathered here and whose green graves we now strew with sweet and beautiful flowers, choice emblems alike of pure hearts and brave spirits, reached in their glorious career that last highest point of nobleness beyond which human power cannot go. They died for their country.
When the dark and vengeful spirit of slavery, always ambitious, preferring to rule in hell than to serve in heaven, fired the Southern heart and stirred all the malign elements of discord. When our great republic, the hope of freedom and self-government throughout the world, had reached the point of supreme peril, when the union of these states was torn and rent asunder at the center, and the armies of a gigantic rebellion came forth with broad blades and bloody hands to destroy the very foundations of American society, the unknown braves who flung themselves into the yawning chasm, where cannon roared and bullets whistled, fought and fell. They died for their country.
We are sometimes asked in the name of patriotism to forget the merits of this fearful struggle and to remember with equal admiration those who struck at the nation's life and those who struck to save it, those who fought for slavery and those who fought for liberty and justice. I am no minister of malice. I would not strike the fallen. I would not repel the repentant, but may my right hand forget her cunning and my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I forget the difference between the parties to that terrible, protracted, and bloody conflict.
If we ought to forget a war which has filled our land with widows and orphans, which has made stumps of men of the very flower of our youth, which has sent them on the journey of life, armless, legless, maimed and mutilated, which has piled up a debt heavier than a mountain of gold, swept uncounted thousands of men into bloody graves and planted agony at a million hearthstones. I say, if this war is to be forgotten, I ask, in the name of all things sacred, what shall men remember? The essence and significance of our devotions here today are not to be found in the fact that the men whose remains fill these graves were brave in battle. If we met simply to show our sense of bravery, we should find enough on both sides to kindle admiration. In the raging storm of fire and blood, in the fierce torrent of shot and shell, of sword and bayonet, whether on foot or on horse, unflinching courage marked the rebel not less than the loyal soldier.
But we are not here to applaud manly courage, save as it has been displayed in a noble cause. We must never forget that victory to the rebellion meant death to the republic. We must never forget that the loyal soldiers who rest beneath this sod flung themselves between the nation and the nation's destroyers. If today we have a country not boiling in an agony of blood, if now we have a united country, no longer cursed by the hell-black system of human bondage, if the American name is no longer a byword and a hissing to a mocking earth, if the Star-Spangled Banner floats only over free American citizens in every quarter of the land, and our country has before it a long and glorious career of justice, liberty, and civilization, we are indebted to the unselfish devotion of the noble army who rest in these honored graves all around us.
50 years to the day after Douglass delivered this speech, something happened in an elevator in the Drexel building in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A young white woman screamed. A young black man ran away. A newspaper was quick to describe it as a sexual assault. The young man, Dick Rowland, was arrested. Within the white community, there were calls for a lynching. Black men from the prosperous, thriving black neighborhood of Greenwood, many of them veterans of World War I, took their guns and went to protect the young man. There was a scuffle, there was a shot, and then hell broke loose. A wave of white men descended on Greenwood and destroyed it. After looting businesses and homes, they set them on fire. 35 blocks were destroyed. As many as 300 Black people died. 10,000 residents of the Greenwood neighborhood were left homeless. Many years later, Dr. Olivia Hooker, a professor of clinical psychology and a member of the U.S. Coast Guard, shared her memories of the massacre, which she endured when she was just 6 years old. One thing that stood out for her as she hid under a table with her siblings was the way that the white men selectively and symbolically destroyed the items that they felt Black folks shouldn't have, including their opera records and their piano. In what might seem to be an incident of mob mentality and mass hysteria, these men were calculated in their cruelty. They paused in all the madness to take perfectly browned biscuits out of the oven and smash them in the mud in the backyard. When Oklahoma National Guard troops arrived and began rounding up Black people and marching them into holding areas at gunpoint under mass arrest, Dr. Hooker realized with horror that it wasn't just a few angry men, but her own city, her own state, her own country that was doing this to her. Olivia Hooker died died in 2018, having never received compensation for all that she lost. The Caruso records, the piano, her mother's biscuit, her home, her childhood dreams.
Mother, how can it be hailing when the sun is shining? There was, I heard this noise hitting the house going blip, 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 blip. And she said, oh, here, I'll show you what's going on. And she took me to the front window and had me peer through the blinds. And she said, that's a machine gun up there. And your country, you see the American flag on it, your country is shooting at you. It's not hailing. And this was a great surprise to me. You see, I was just 6 years old. Never occurred to me my country, 'tis of thee, would shoot at me.
It never occurred to me, my country, 'tis of thee, would shoot at me. Our call to offering today is from Sandra Flansburgh. Sandra.
I am Sandra Flansburgh, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I have served in the church in many ways over the time I've been here, including as president, but mainly now chairing the voice organizing team. In the before times, I served running the bookstore and also on the search committee for the director of music, which I hope we can tie in on soon. Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work in our community, our Change for Change partners. This month, our Change for Change partner is Voice. I've been working and involved with Voice for 13 years, working on a range of issues like setting up a citizens advisory board for the jail, stopping some of the worst of the state's anti-immigrant legislation, supporting the teachers' strike, and shining a light on the injustices of the state's criminal justice fines and fees system. What keeps me involved is the amazing opportunity to work to develop new leaders, work alongside Black churches and predominantly Hispanic congregations, and develop relationships that can only be developed by standing with others different than myself, that challenge my own limitations and power to act. I hope you will give generously on this last Sunday of the month.
Mother Mary, full of grace, awaken In the dark night of the soul, our broken hearts you can make whole. Oh, Mother Mary, come and carry us in your embrace. Let us see your gentle face, Mary.
With thanks to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Long Beach virtual choir for our offertory today, which was Requiem by Eliza Gilkison. Quoting Frederick Douglass, "There is in the very air of this resting ground of the unknown dead a silent, subtle, and all-pervading eloquence, far more touching, impressive, and thrilling than living lips have ever uttered." On this 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, there is a lot of noise. Political noise, media noise, but under all this, there is a silence. There is the silent, subtle, and all-pervading eloquence of 300 unknown dead, their bodies not yet found, their cries for justice not yet answered. These unknown dead, like those lying within the mass grave in Arlington Cemetery, were loyal. They believed in the American promise that if you work hard and support your community, you can build a home worth fighting for, a place where you can raise your children in safety, a place where you can grow into your fullest potential. And yet, in the raging storms of fire and blood, in the fierce torrent of shot and shell, their dreams were stolen from them. In their own way, these loyal unknown dead also died for their country. And make no mistake, they didn't just die at the hands of some random angry mob. They died at the hands of their country. A country contaminated from its very beginning with the dark and vengeful spirit of slavery. Behind all the noise of this centennial, there is the silent, subtle, and all-pervading eloquence of 10,000 Black people left homeless after the massacre. Some of them fled, most of them stayed, and spent the next Oklahoma winter living in tents and ramshackle shanties, cooking over open fires, not having received a penny of the insurance money that was owed them, not having received any aid from their city or state. Some had already risked their lives for their country in World War I. Others would go on, even after all of this, to fight in World War II. One of these was Hughes Van Ellis, one of just 3 known survivors of the massacre still alive today. He gave this testimony before Congress on May 19th.
I did my duty in World War II. I served in combat in the Far East with the 234th AAA Gun Battalion. We were all Black battalion. I fought for freedom aboard, even though it was ripped away from me at home. Even after my home and my community were destroyed. It's because I believe in the end, America would get its right. When I returned home from the war, I didn't find any of this freedom. I was fighting for overseas. Unlike white servicemen, I wasn't entitled to GI Bill benefits because of the color of my skin. I came home to segregation, a separate and unequal America, but still I believed in America. This is why we are still speaking up today. Even at this age of 100, the Tulsa Race Massacre is a footnote in the history books for us. We live with it every day, and the thought of what Greenwood was and what it could have been. We aren't just black and white pictures on a screen. We are flesh and blood. I was there when it happened. I'm still here.
That's right. That's right.
My sister was there when she stood here. We are not asking for his hand out. All we are asking for is for a chance to be treated like a first-class citizen who truly in the pictures of the promise that this is a land where there is liberty and justice for all. We are asking for justice for a lifetime of ongoing harm that was caused by the massacre. We can give us the chance to be hard and give us a chance to be made whole. After all of these years and after all of our struggle, I still believe in America. I still believe in the ideas that I fought overseas to defend. And believe if given this chance, I will do the right thing and justice will be served. Please do not let me leave this earth without justice like all the others, massacre survivors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Do you want to say anything else? You want to say anything else?
I want to say that I appreciate being here, and I hope we all will work together. We are one. We are one.
Please join me in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, spirit of justice. Hughes Van Alice said, "We are one." When I gesture to you, please join me in repeating this refrain. Today, on this Memorial Day weekend, as we mourn the lives stolen by the bloody grasp of war, may we take this message to heart. With all the soldiers who have given their lives for the sake of freedom, justice, and liberty, and with all the families left to grieve their loss, we affirm, we are one. On this centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre and memory of those who were slaughtered and those whose homes and community were destroyed, in solidarity with the survivors and their descendants, in alliance with all those who go on to fight the brutal scourge of white supremacy, we affirm we are one. With all those who have died in the most recent violent conflict in Gaza and East Jerusalem, over 250 people at latest count, including at least 68 children. With the Palestinian families threatened with the loss of the homes in which they've lived for years and generations. With all those who live with the terrible fear of renewed violence, we affirm we are one. With the people of India facing soaring rates of COVID-19 infections and deaths, we say, we are one. With victims of all forms of hate, including racism, misogyny, heterosexism, ableism, and transphobia, we affirm we are one. With the victims of gun violence, including the victims of last week's mass shooting in San Jose and yesterday's shooting in Florida, we affirm we are one. With those who continue to speak truth even when those in power try to silence them, with those who will not allow the abuses of history to be forgotten, with those who are fighting for the survival of democracy in this country, we affirm we are one. With all people everywhere, we are one. With all the beings of this beautiful and hurting planet, we are one. May it be so. Amen. Remaining in a spirit of meditation and introspection, I offer this hymn. It's called Elijah by Bill Harley. And it comes to us thanks to the First Unitarian Church of Brooklyn. In his speech at Arlington Cemetery, Frederick Douglass said, "I am no minister of malice. I would not strike the fallen. I would not repel the repentant. But may my right hand forget her cunning and my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, if I forget the difference between the parties to that terrible, protracted, and bloody conflict." After the Civil War ended and the reunited States struggled to get back on its feet, there were many who wanted to forget that the South had risen in rebellion against this country as enemies of this country, fighting not for liberty and equality, but for what Douglass called the hell-black system of human bondage. There were those who wanted to paint Confederate and Union soldiers with the same brush of virtue and courage. And in many ways, that is just what happened. It was only in recent years that Confederate statues of so-called heroes began to tumble. After the smoke cleared in Greenwood, there was a deafening silence that reigned for generations. No one spoke of what happened. Local newspapers erased those stories before they were preserved on microfiche and microfilm. History textbooks included no mention of the massacre, and if teachers did mention the event, it was described as a race riot, placing blame for the disaster on the heads of the victims themselves. If not for the survivors who continued to speak up, the whole tragedy might have been erased from history. Today, in our government, there are people who want the recent events of January 6th to be forgotten. They are the same ones who would gaslight the American people into believing that the MAGA hat wearing rioters who attacked our own US Capitol were Antifa agents in disguise, or that what we all witnessed with our own eyes as a violent attack on democracy was really just a peaceful protest. And now those same individuals are passing laws that would make it more difficult to speak the truth about the deep history of racism and other forms of hatred and inequity in this country. Here in Oklahoma, our governor signed House Bill 1775, which prohibits diversity training in state-funded colleges and universities and bans public schools from teaching any content that would lead an individual to, quote, feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex, unquote. Well, I'm sure those people to whom Frederick Douglass was speaking 150 years ago likewise wanted to forget all the discomfort and guilt associated with human bondage. It was much easier to paint a romanticized version of history in which that uncomfortable legacy of slavery and Jim Crow was not spoken of in polite society. And I'm confident that the white Tulsans who participated in the massacre and those who even long after benefited from the destruction of Greenwood found it much more psychologically agreeable to cover up the ugliness of what happened. But here's the thing, history is uncomfortable. And white supremacy will not be dismantled until white privilege and systemic racism are acknowledged. And that work is by definition uncomfortable, even psychologically distressing. It's the comfort and distress that are the indicators that true change is happening. The great Unitarian theologian, James Luther Adams, wrote that the principle upon which our religious tradition depends is that revelation is continuous. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism. But truth doesn't just reveal itself. It takes us to do that. And there are people in positions of power who will fight with everything they have to keep uncomfortable truths from ever coming to the surface, which is why we who believe in the beloved community, we who believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we who affirm the value of democratic processes and the importance of hearing every voice, we must fight with everything we have to ensure that truth continues to be revealed. And even when that truth is uncomfortable or causes us psychological distress, maybe especially then, because there is no such thing as a comfortable revolution. As Frederick Douglass noted 150 years ago, we are sometimes asked, in the name of patriotism, to forget the merits of this fateful struggle. But if we forget the atrocities of white supremacy, if we forget what happened in Tulsa on this weekend 100 years ago, if we forget why the massacre happened and how it was covered up for so long, if we forget that there is still so much work to do and that the work begins with a willingness to be uncomfortable, then what, in the name of all things sacred, shall we remember? Our closing hymn is Lift Every Voice and Sing, performed by the Stanford Talisman Alumni Virtual Choir. And the story of the hymn is explained within this video.
Civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing as a poem, which was set to music by his brother John Roseman Johnson in 1899. The song is now known as the Black National Anthem in America. It is a protest, a hymn, and a prayer of profound significance for our people. We lift every voice and sing to express ourselves. We lift every voice to show that we have strength in numbers and we will not be silent. We lift every voice and sing to be lifted, liberated, and free.
Freedom, the power to determine action without restraint. Freedom, the absence of or release from ties, obligations, or restrictions. Freedom, or facility of movement or action. Freedom, frankness or boldness in manner or speech. Freedom, a political right. Until we are all free, none of us is free. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the roaring our path through the blood of the slaughter. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright story stands. God of our weary ears, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet walk out where we drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Fran, would you extinguish our chalice for us?
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community, which burns in our hearts.
Go out now to do the work of remembering. Go out to do the work of repairing. Go out to do the work of speaking and revealing truth. Go in courage. Go in love. Always in courageous love. May it be so. I hope that after a short break, you'll come back and join us for small discussion in our virtual coffee hour. But first, I have a postlude that I'd like to play for you. This is Ella's song, written by the great Bernice Johnson Reagan, performed by the Resistance Revival Chorus.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mothers, sons, is as important as the killing of white men. be just one and a none.